Well, I want to welcome you to the program today. We have a very special guest. Her name is Reverend Lindsay James, and she's the pastor of the Westminster Presbyterian Church in Dubuque, Iowa. And so, Lindsay, thanks so much for being with us today.
Yes.
And I'm so glad that we have her on the program today because, well, here again, we are dealing with times in our lives that are very challenging. And in those times, there can be a lot of conflict. And so that's one of the things that we're always looking to do is how do we resolve conflict? How do we try to live in an environment where we are getting along with each other? And so when we think about this topic, Lindsay, what brought this on? You know, as far as you in your ministry to say, in today's society where it seems like there's a lot of conflict, unrest, a lot of darkness in the world, that how do we address this and to try to come up with some solutions rather than just adding to the problem, so to speak.
Right. Well, if you will allow me to go back, I'll start kind of a little bit more from the beginning, which has to do with some of my own personal spiritual journey with God. I was 21 when 9/11 happened. I was a junior. I was about to start my junior year of college. This was a turning moment in my life. I remember distinctly my mother waking me up early in the morning. It was the week before college started, and saying, "Lindsay, there's something really horrific happening in our country, and I think it's important for you to know and be informed." So she woke me up, and we sat in front of the television, and we watched the events of 9/11 unfold. And that experience for me, both horrifying and tragic, but it also felt very distant. So I was at the time living on the West Coast. It was happening on the East Coast. It was happening as I watched it over television. So it almost looked as if it was a Hollywood, movie happening. I mean, it was just so unfathomable for me to see this as reality. 3 days later, however, it became very real for me. I received an email from my college president. I was attending Santa Clara University at the time in Northern California, and he informed our entire college community that Diora Bodley, one of our fellow college students, had died in the plane that went down in Pittsburgh. Diora, I remember reading that email and staring at the name Diora and thinking, I just can't be my friend Diora. So Diora and I had known each other. We served in a Kindergarten America Reads program. So after school, we would go and teach and tutor kindergartners how to read. So I got to know Diora through this reading program, and she was just an incredible human being. I mean, generous, loving, so much energy. The students who, we tutored just adored her. I adored her. The staff adored her. I mean, she was this exceptional human being. And so it became so real when I read that name and then realized this was not something that I just watched on TV so many hundreds of miles away. This is in my backyard, and this is my friend. So with that, you can imagine anytime we lose someone, we go through these incredible process of grief and loss. And for me, I really got stuck in this phase of anger. I was just so angry that this horrific incident happened. And so I found myself wanting to blame, wanting to be angry, and just in so much emotional pain and suffering for quite a long period of time. Now, while I was going through that process, I also became close with another woman named Sarah. Sarah was also a college student. She grew up in the Middle East, and her parents were born and raised in the Middle East, and she was first generation Muslim American. And all of a sudden, all of this anger and this blame that I had, God seemed to complicate that for me in this relationship with Sarah. all of a sudden I was able to realize that, you know, Sarah, who was equally as loving and beautiful of a human being as my friend who I lost, Diora, you know, why would I blame or spend all of this time in pain and anger toward her when really, you know, she was not a part of this, this horrific circumstance. So then all of a sudden God started working in my life around my anger and started complicating that for me. And then I started to see the world differently. So all of a sudden I started seeing, you know, that God is moving in all of these relationships, that God is moving in ways of healing and peace despite these horrific incidents of pain and conflict and suffering. So it began to kind of really work in my life, you know, around those kinds of concepts. So that's kind of the story that really helped me to begin to see my role as someone who can work with God in bringing about peace and healing and restoration, not only in personal lives and, you know, but in our cities and in our world as well.
Yeah. September 11th, 2001 was definitely a day that, well, now is etched in our minds for those of us who were living at that time. And like you say, it almost seems like, well, the word I think I hear so often now, surreal. You know, looking at this, like this, can this really be real? You know, it does look like something out of a Hollywood movie.
Right.
And yeah, all of the sadness, the loss, and how could this be happening? Is this really within our human nature? I mean, to actually go that low to do something like this? But then when you've had a friend who lost her life in this, then that all of a sudden even becomes more painful when you can put a face in a person and somebody who you love so much on all this. And so, yeah, I can see where that triggers all of the emotions of grief, you know, like anger and depression and frustrations and things like that. But then comes along this other gal that shows you, well, because, you know, sometimes it's so tempting to say, well, I'm going to just take a brush and just paint this whole social sector of people as being, I'm just, whatever, we want to brush them off as being, I don't know, evil or not good. We don't want them around, and, you know, develop all this hate and prejudice. And whereas, you know, it's almost like God put this person in your life to show you a different way, to say that, no, we're not going to just become this angry, bitter people, especially directed toward, you know, another group of people, but to say, no, we need to work and become peacemakers.
Yes,
Isn't that something?
Yeah. Well, and you know, this, not only was it just so personally transforming and healing for me, but all of a sudden, I started to see the world in a different way. One, I started to see all of the pain and the conflict, you know, all around. I mean, we are people who are, you know, in suffering, and, you know, this world is a broken place and hurting people. And all of a sudden I saw all that. I also simultaneously felt called to, you know, to help, you know, in that. But I also felt this wrestling, I call it compassion fatigue, and I think it's actually a concept that has been adopted now. As I feel like we're in a time where there's so much conflict, there's so much unrest, and we see it all. I mean, we have access to, you know, media technology and all kinds of social media technology that we haven't had before. And so we're seeing all of this in new ways, and it's exhausting. And it can make you feel helpless almost, you know, like you just, what do I do? The world is so broken and the problems are so huge, and, you know, I'm just one person. Can I actually, you know, and so you get compassion fatigue. You're so broken over these things. I found myself in that state, and, you know, sometimes I'll find myself in that state at different times in my life. But I had a good friend of mine when I was kind of in this state invite me to allow my 4-year-old daughter to do a Peace Institute, a 3-day camp for like really young kids, to actually experience this. And I thought to myself, there is no way that, one, we can teach concepts of peace to little kids. They're just too abstract. They're too, and two, you know, how do we, this isn't going to be practical, you know, like how are we, because we want to be practical. So I said, okay, I'm tired, I'm compassion fatigued, I see so much pain, but yes, take my daughter for 3 days, teach her some peace concepts, and let's see if that will, you know, make a difference. And 3 days later, I had, and it's such a beautiful story, but I had a 4-year-old ambassador of peace in my household. So let me tell you what this looked like. So she's 4, and she would say she has a little brother who, you know, little brothers, they can be pesky. So she would come home and tell me about what she learned. She'd tell me about these peace heroes that she learned about, and then she would actually use concepts with her little brother who were, you know, or when she was frustrated with me. But at one point, you know, my son had like ripped a toy out of her hand, and she said this, she said, "Stop, I want to work it out." And I sat there thinking, what? You know, what is this? And I'm just watching it unplay. She said, "Stop, I want to work it out." And it was this beautiful, you know, practice of saying, I'm not going to let you rip a toy out of my hand, but I want you to know I'm opening my hands up to you to actually working out and solving this issue. She would also, she would also say things to me like, "Mom, when you raise your voice at me, it breaks my peace. I feel hurt." And I thought, oh no, I've been caught. I've been caught by my 4-year-old, you know, that when I'm in a frustrated moment, that she is able to pick up on that and then articulate her feelings. And it started to transform our household, this 4-year-old little ambassador of peace, but it also started transforming my own compassion fatigue. I realized, you know, we actually can be agents of peace in this world, and God is calling us to be agents of peace in this world. And it's not just an abstract concept. There are practical ways that we can teach and be peacemakers in our cities.
I think there's probably a lot of us out there who probably can relate to this whole concept of compassion fatigue.
Yeah,
Isn't that something?
Yes.
Yeah, there's just so much of it that after a while we just, you know, we can do what we can do, and then after a while, after we feel like we get more and more dump truck loads of it on us, that we just, after a while, we just get the sense of learned helplessness. Like, I'm tired. I can't. It's just coming at us in all directions in waves, kind of a thing. And after a while, it just kind of wears people down. But we can't. You know, it's this whole new concept. You know, having a young child to be able to learn the ways of peace. You know, that this becomes their nature from the time to learn how to resolve things. And so I think, you know, just how very important that is, but then to say, well, maybe we just need to retool our person to say, well, okay, if I'm getting fatigued by doing what is right, then maybe I need to approach it in a different way so that this is not happening.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think these concepts are teachable. So out of this, you know, kind of kid peace camp, the birth of this idea of having a Peace Institute for high school students rose to the surface. So I actually, in addition to being a pastor at Westminster Presbyterian Church, I am the director of the Loris College Peace Institute.
Okay.
So let me tell you a little bit about this, because I think this is an exciting concept. So,
well, can I just
say
one thing about your daughter?
Yes.
She went to, was there like you say it was a seminar that was going on, or that
it was
your daughter, I mean, what was this through, or was it just somebody doing a little program? Or
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking, well, maybe a lot of people are thinking, yeah, I should get my child into this.
How do I? Right.
You know, well, let's hear more about this. And because I think, obviously she learned
yes.
some valuable things, you know, whether
Hugely
it was
valuable.
with, okay,
Yes.
just share a little bit
Yes.
about that, then we want to get into the piece. 'Cause we
Yes,
wanna hear
yes,
about
yes.
that too, but-
Well, so yeah, so this was actually a friend of mine. Her name is Stacia McDermott. She lives here in Dubuque. She also works for Loris. The Father Ray Herman Peace and Justice is her area at Loris. And so she essentially said, over the summer, I just want to provide some curriculum and content for kids, various ages from 4, on up around peace. And it was very simple. It was in her backyard. There was probably 10 or 12 kiddos. It was for a couple hours a day. They would learn some things, and then they would do some practices and play. And I mean, it was just this really, beautiful experience. It also gave me a little bit of, time in my day to breathe. So I was happy to send, my little kiddo to someone else is gonna, take care of them for a little bit and teach them something really beautiful. So that was kind of, so it was very informal. Someone who has experience, who leads this kinds of stuff at Loris College, but who wanted to do it in an informal way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Loris College.
Yes,
We have
yes.
going out for little. Yeah, so you are working now in this whole area of peace through Loris College,
Yes.
and boy, if there's ever a time that we need
Yes.
institutes for peace and things like that right now, and so much I think with peace, also the word justice comes
Yes,
along, because I
yes.
think when people are not treated fairly, and when they feel the sense of powerlessness, that's when they begin to react. Then
Right,
it's just like
right.
I don't have any power over this, and so now
Right.
I react, and this is how it comes out. But okay, well, anyway, so the Peace
Yes.
Institute. Yeah, tell us all of what the opportunities are there, and
Yes.
what's kind of the
Yeah.
big emphasis, how
Yes.
to take a look at peace, because I think a lot of people were looking at, well, how do we improve in this area? How can we try to de-escalate and diffuse a lot of the anxiety and anger and tensions that are in our world right now, whether they be national things or just the people that I work with.
Right. Well, Loris College is, very committed. It's a Catholic institution, very committed to Catholic social teaching, very committed to peace and justice, within their own context, within our city, within our counties, within our state, within the world. So Loris College in and of itself is an ambassador of peace. So what came out of this little 3-day kid peace camp was an idea to say, how do we develop leadership skills in high school age students that take in account all of this conflict and unrest. And we all, I'm sure, know this by just looking around us. There's so much conflict, there's so much unrest. There is violence, there is anger, there is hate, there's just a lot of pain. And we are in a unique stage in history with access to technology that can be a good thing and a difficult thing, complicate things at the same time. How do we train high school students to lead in this kind of an environment? Which is a really, that's a difficult question. And so out of asking that question came this idea of creating a 3-day Peace Institute for high school students. So in August, we are opening up the campus for students who are 10th grade through 12th grade who are interested in learning about these concepts to come and stay overnight at Loris College and to experience some content around peace with self, peace with others, and peace with the world. So it's a threefold content, and they will learn different kinds of concepts. They're not going to be as simple as stop, I want to work it out. They're going to be these robust concepts that will help them, however, lead as professionals in their work environment, lead as Christian leaders and religious leaders within their religious contexts, and really hopefully it will ripple out into our cities, our states, and our world. And so I think that is a really exciting concept. So that's going to happen this August, and there will be information available on your screen a website that will kind of give you an idea if you're interested in nominating someone to apply for this Peace Institute, or if you have a high school age student or you are a high school age student and are interested in applying, you can seek out that link and get some more information about it. So it's a very exciting, and hopefully will give concrete practical skills so that we can partner with God in God's peace in our world.
Yeah, you mentioned that we are at a critical point
Yes.
in our history, and as we study history,
Yes.
that challenges come to every generation, but the whole key is how that each generation deals with it. To get through this difficult time, whether it's the Great Depression or World War II or what we're dealing with today. But I would say that it's very key right now. I'm thinking, because I keep thinking, well, how is our generation, or how is the younger generation going to survive and get stronger in the midst of the challenges that we're facing today that may be very different than what people dealt with in the previous generations or what they will deal with in the future generation. But I think for a leader, it's going to be key
Yes.
to be peacemakers. I think your strong leaders now, an approach that has to happen is an approach of peace.
Absolutely.
And so I think what you're doing is so very critical, so very important to say, well, to get high schoolers to say, because it seems like most young people, high schoolers today, and the education that they are receiving, they're very talented,
Yes.
very intellectual young people, but to be given those tools, those skills, to say, but in the midst of all of what I have received as far as my education and technology and things, to know how to be a peacemaker in this world today, I think that is a person that's going to rise up and be head and shoulders above everybody else, because they're going to be so needed.
Yes, yes. Well, and the painful realities of conflict are there, and they are escalating. And if we don't, as a generation, equip younger generations in these skills, then the future seems bleak and very scary. But like you're saying, there are these incredibly talented young people who have hearts wide open for these kinds of things to really to lead and lead us in that as well. And so it feels like a very critical time and important work.
We have Lindsay's information up on the screen, and this is coming up in August. August may seem like it's a long ways away, but it comes faster than we think. And so now's the time to start getting this on our calendars, because our calendars can fill up pretty fast. But how important it is for young people. We really want to encourage young people to attend this seminar, because it's going to be, so very vital and so very helpful to be gaining skills on how to be peacemakers, living in peace, helping, knowing how to resolve difficult situations. But as you mentioned, peace in a threefold thing: peace within yourself, because there's so many people, it seems, that don't have that peace within themselves. But gaining that peace, I guess that's where it starts, right?
Yes, yes.
And then having peace with those around you, and then peace in our world. And I'll tell you what, if we can have everybody working on that, then pretty soon I think peace world peace does happen.
Yes.
But it has to begin with each one of us, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And I think that's where, the compassion fatigue, where we feel tired and helpless, like we can't actually make a difference. We can, and we're invited to. And, sometimes it's just about figuring out, how the little ways and the little steps forward in our particular context. So it is achievable and possible.
Yeah.
With God's help. Let me emphasize that, with God's help.
Yeah, so the Peace Institute, that's a big thing that's coming up. Are there other areas or ways that it's branching out, that maybe the whole community can take advantage of?
Well, the hope is, it's actually been really encouraging that as I've gone around and presented to different groups about this initiative at Loris, there are adults who are saying, what about us? I often joke when I'm presenting with groups of people, I ask the question, Are you married? Do you have a sibling? Do you have a parent? Do you have a neighbor? All of us are in relationship with people, and therefore all of us you know, have some element of conflict or relational challenging dynamics in our lives, and that we all need this. And so the adults have said, okay, well, what's next for us? So the hope is we will pilot this program coming up here in August 4th through 6th, and then we will and then hope to see whether or not we want to offer this more regularly, whether we want to expand it to different age groups, what the interest is. This is really the only, in our tri-state region, the only Peace Institute happening. And so I think that there is some very deep need, and people would love to participate in something like that. So that's the hope. It will ripple out and continue to grow.
People just understand that peace is always an advantage for us. I mean, if we can be living at peace, I mean, not only does that what that does for ourselves, but how we all benefit from peaceful relationships. We're building each other up rather than then tearing each other down. We are, you know, we're building up society. We're building up people, and how wonderful it is to be at peace with people rather than, well, you know how it is when we have a tension with somebody, how frustrating that is, and how that wears us down. And I think about Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." And I think, what a wonderful thing to be the peacemakers, you know, the children of God. Yeah, well, this is Pastor Lindsay James, and she is the pastor of the Westminster Presbyterian Church in Dubuque, but she also is heading up the Peace Institute at Loras College here in Dubuque. And a lot of exciting things that are happening with the Peace Institute. You know, everything for opportunities for little children and then for high schoolers, and eventually it'll just continue to branch out, because I think we're all hungering and thirsting for peace and learning just how it is that we can be those peacemakers. So Lindsay, thank you so much you've been a real blessing to us.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work, and I want to thank all of you for joining us this day as well.